Hi, my name is Dr. Katrin Meidell, and I'm the Viola professor at the Schwob School of Music, Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. I'm going to talk to you today about the 2021 GMEA 9th and 10th grade Etude, which is the Mazas Etudes Spéciales, the Pagels edition, and this is number 9. They want us doing this at quarter note equals 90. So I'm going to give you a tutorial, and then I will go ahead and perform the Etude for you. So this Etude is all about articulation, which means it's really focusing on the right side. So what I want to encourage you to do is, we have a lot of this, that kind of articulation, and what you really want to do is have a fairly strong right finger and a nice balance across all 4 of your fingers. And don't use too much bow. So I'm going to have a sticky, consolidated bow. If I use more bow than that, it gets kind of wild sounding. So I want to have a strong, small bow. And that actually also helps with the sound quality, because if you have sort of a thick and sticky bow, it actually makes you sound louder than if you're just using lots of air, which is still resonant, but it's just not a very pleasant sound versus. So you can hear how much more directional that is. So another thing in terms of articulation in this etude are the differences between slurs and dots and tenutos. So in our first measure, we have slur, tenuto, dot, tenuto, dot, slur, accent. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So just make sure that you're paying attention to all of these things. So that you get all of that, the differences there. What I would encourage you to do is, we have a lot of little rests in this etude, and so whenever you get one of those quarter note rests, move your bow back to the balance point. Because if I just stop here, I'm in the wrong part of the bow. So at the end of my D sharp, I'm going to move back to the balance point. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm actually starting from the string, so I don't want to be doing a, because that tends to be a dirty beginning of your note, so you want to make sure that you place the bow. Another tip for the dotted rhythm that we get throughout the etude is to not lift your bow. So we want to stop the bow and re-articulate with the index finger. But I'm not bouncing or getting out of the string, because that's going to be an unclean sound. So when we do have these accents, they are sporadically throughout the etude. I really encourage you to do them with your index finger, not with bow speed. So again, if I go back to that first one that we get, if I use too much bow, it gets really wild sounding, whereas if I think sort of with my arm weight, using the entire arm, but mostly the index finger, that's actually going to give you a much cleaner accent than if you use lots of arm weight. So another thing that this etude does is it has really dramatic dynamic changes. So if you look at the top of the second page, where the first measure is piano, the second measure is forte, then we have piano and forte, and then mezzo forte. So just paying attention to all these dynamics, and don't let your pianos become wispy. So we don't want to hear, like, you still want to maintain core sound. trick for you. At the end of the second line of the Etude, we get a fifth from D to G. And what I would encourage you to do is to place, if your finger is wide enough, place your first finger on both strings when you put your finger down on the D. So at this point, I'm already on both strings. So the only thing that I have to move is my bow, because that's going to make that nice and clean. In the last line of the first page, second measure, we get a C natural, and that C natural is a little bit tricky, and it almost feels like it ought to be a C sharp. So just be careful, because we're playing in second position. It's much easier to play, but that's the wrong note. So we want to make sure that we get, even though we have a F sharp on the D string, we want to get down to a C natural on the A string. So just watch out for that, that note there. Another thing at the very end of this first page, for me personally, it's not comfortable to do an extension down. So I'm actually doing a micro shift into second position rather than trying to extend down for the B. So I'm actually moving my entire hand, because that's cleaner for me than trying to do an extension. In a couple of spots on the second page, we get an extension up. So at the end of the first line on the second page. And I think you can sort of think of it almost like a harmonic. So you can just throw your finger up there real fast, and that's going to be easier than thinking of it as a stretch and then pulling back down for the 3. Another thing that I want you to consider are the string crossings. On the second page, we get a couple of really dramatic string crossings where we're going from the A string all the way over the C string, and we do have a stop. So this is in the third line on the second page, we're going from. So what you want to do is you want to stop your bow on the A string where everything stays, and then together, because that's going to make that a lot cleaner than if your bow goes before. So together, stop, freeze, everyone moves together, and in context, that makes that nice and clean. So there are a couple of those spots in the Etude. We have a couple of dolce spots in this Etude that have grace notes. You want to make sure that the grace notes are ahead of the beat. So if I keep going from approximately where I was, so you want to make sure that you feel that the grace notes are before the beat, not on the beat, because otherwise that would sound more like. And you want the opposite of that. In the middle of the second page, we start to see a couple of double stops. The first one's not too bad because it's against an open string. That one's fine. For the next one, where we're in second position, I would encourage you to either find first your 4 and then add the 1, or find your 1 and then add the 4. We actually have time in that one beat of rest to place and then play. So I'm actually thinking 1, add the 4. That's especially useful in the next one where we have G against A sharp. G, first position, is an easy note. We play that one all the time, right? So if you can confidently place that note and then add a high 1, you'll be in tune. Whereas if you're like, oh, high 1, 3, it can get really confusing. So place your G first and then add the A sharp. At least that's my advice. So for the 3-note chords, I encourage you to only have the fingers down that you're actually playing. So what I mean is coordinate the left and the right side so they're both moving together. So in this first one where we have a 2, 3, 4, I'm not actually going to be placing 2, 3, and 4 all at the same time. I'm going to place my 2, 3, and then I'm going to let go of the 2 and roll to the 4. Because if I try to get all 4 fingers down, it encourages squeezing, and it gets really tight and hard. So it's actually easier. It will probably take you a little bit longer to work out the coordination of that, but in the long run, that's a much healthier way to play a 3-note chord or 4-note chord instead of trying to get all your fingers down at the same time. The other thing with the chords is you want to think about your bow distribution, and you want your bass notes to be approximately from the very, very beginning of your hair to about the balance point so that you have the rest of the bow for the top notes. So we use a slow, heavy bow, and then we roll, and we want to try and make it a very round roll, not angular. And that gives you a nice chord. And then in the very last measure, I think this is pretty hard where we're going from the E to the double stop back to the E. And I don't know if you saw what I just did there, but I'm actually pivoting my entire arm so I can get from the C string side to the D A string side and then back to the C string side. So that's a lot easier than like, or something where you're sort of compressing. So I don't know if you can see this in the angle, but this is a really awkward angle from my wrist. So I want to avoid that. So you basically want to make sure that you can sort of imagine that your finger actually starts here and that we don't have much of this going on. We never want to have this sideways motion in your wrist. That's not healthy for your hand. So if I need to be on the low string, notice my elbow's out forward, and if I'm on the high string, my elbow is back so that I'm supporting the wrist instead of doing weird angular things in there. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, and I will do my best to answer them. But now I'm going to perform the etude for you.